Welcome to Tony's Bonsai. Today we've got an update episode. I'll be doing a bit of work on this Austrian pine that's coming along really nicely. That's a bit later on. First of all, let's look at these dead maples and see if they made it. A couple of weeks ago I picked up 3 maples from B&M Bargains, £1 each, and they had no leaves on them, they were dying, and I just thought I'll see, for that kind of price, can I get them back together? You might see something quite interesting here, and it's this tree. They were all marked as going green aces, like this one, but as you can see, this is an Atropurpureum, and very nice. I'm glad to have something a bit different. And from a success story to a definite failure. I watched a YouTube video the other day by one of my favourite YouTubers. He's called Harry Harrington, and he's so knowledgeable, and he did a programme about rosemary, and I called this video the Rosemary Experiment, and as you can see, it's dead. If you want information on what to do with one of these trees, Harry explains everything, and what I should have done is do it at a different time of year. You're supposed to prune rosemary in the summer, and I did it in the spring, so I just got it wrong. It's dead. I mean, it had some lovely potential, this tree, but this is like the Norwegian blue parrot. It is no more. Going back to one of my much earlier videos is this hawthorn. It was very much a stump that I had no hopes that it would live. It just came up as a piece with a hawthorn that I was collecting in the winter. So I stuck it in this bowl, it came alive, and I did some work on it in a video months ago, where I was doing some bud selection at the base, and those buds now have developed into branches, but I do need to take one of these branches off. This is a good example of the bud selection. There were about 6 or 7 buds along here, and I removed them and left it to these 3. Which are growing really healthily and looking good. Round at the other side of the tree, we can see there's too many branches here, definitely too many. So I'll take that little one off, and at least one of these has to go, possibly 2, but for the time being, I'll take that one off, because it just, there's no need, there's no way I'm having 3 branches emanating from that one point. I mean, it's fairly unlikely that I'll have 2, to be fair, but for the time being I do still want to leave plenty of life and growth into the tree. I don't want to weaken it too much. I did an episode called Do Hazel Make Good Bonsai? I think they potentially do. This one, however, was so awkward and weird. I tried an air layer, and I'll show you what's happened. A few weeks ago I was going to shoot a video of me removing this, but during filming it started absolutely chucking it down, and I just ended up aborting. So I want to show you now why it's not worked. And what's happened is the tree's calloused right across that gap, and so it's never sent roots out because it reconnected this bark to this bark. Really interesting, I think. Around this other side you can see it's bridged right across all the way down, and that's pulling all the nutrients up now. So I've chosen this angle also just to show you how ugly this tree is. I mean, it's terrible. I'm not completely convinced what to do with this tree going forward. It's got one little sucker here, but I'm really tempted to just cut it off right down here and let this base send new shoots out and just grow it into a completely new tree. All this up here, it's so ugly, and it's got a big inverse taper bulge here. It's just got no redeeming qualities really, so I think I'll start from scratch next year with that one. I picked this Cotoneaster up from a garden centre a month or 2 ago, put some wire on it and stuff, and it's growing nicely. In fact, I think now's the time to get this wire off. In quite a few of my videos I talk about initially getting the structure correct, and I'm really happy with how this one's going. But I don't want the wire to bite in any more than it needs to, so I've got a feeling it's just beginning to nip into the surface now. And it is. Not a lot. It's only just sort of bruising, slightly bruising the bark. So this is a perfect time to remove this wire to the shape should be pretty much held. And if it isn't, I can always reapply wire. No problem. So get that wire off. Yep, there's no major marking. And that's now held in its new form. I've got another Cotoneaster that I did at the same time, but this one didn't require any wiring, so there's nothing to do with that one. And the final tree for today's update video is this Austrian pine that I showed you at the beginning. I don't want the wire to bite in too much, so I'm going to take it off. The eventual design for this tree is for the trunk to come up and me to turn this side branch into the new apex. So I'm not bothered about this wire biting in up here, and this is where the wire is biting in the most. I only applied this wire just to point the tree in a vertical orientation so that the tree was most healthy. So I'm going to show you this wire now and how much it's biting in. It's not always easy to know whether wire's biting in, but the way that I kind of judge it is you just look at the circumference of it and see, you can tell here that, you know, 50% of that wire is now below the surface of the bark, so you know it's going to have, you know, substantially bitten in, which is what you want with pine, because it needs to bite in a bit for it to hold. Now, as I just said a couple of moments ago, this isn't in the final design of the tree, so I'm completely unconcerned that this is biting in, and this is the part I expected to bite in the most, because this is where I applied the most severe bend. I'm expecting this side branch to have bitten in much less, because obviously this branch will have thickened up nowhere near as much as the main trunk. Therefore it'll bite in less, but the flip side of that is it's less likely to have held its shape. So I'm just using my wire cutters to grab the wire here because my pliers are inside and I can't be bothered getting them. And it's quite thick wire, this, so it does require a bit of manipulation. So with a bit of luck, this branch will hold its shape somewhat. There's almost no scarring on that branch, so it's not really dug in at all. But I'm really quite pleased with how that's kind of taken on this new shape. And with a bit of luck, it's held this trunk in place. That'd be ideal if it has done. It appears to have held it somewhat, which is absolutely fantastic. So that's really gripped nicely. I'll just pull that wire out there. We can see from this view the nice new shape of the new tree. I think it's going to be really pleasing, but I do need to do a chop on this. I've never really done that on a pine, so if you could let me know in the comments when is the best time for me to do a trunk chop on an Austrian pine like this, that'd be really helpful, thanks. That's the end of my updates. As always, thanks for joining me and have a great day.